Welcome to the Wholesome Healing Collective.
Join us on our podcast for a journey into the hearts of healers from all walks of life, diving deep as we explore meaningful conversations that have the power to inspire, empower, and share life-changing wisdom.
Through this community, we hope to create a welcoming environment where our listeners leave feeling nurtured and uplifted. We are so delighted you are here. My name is Alyssa.
And I'm Renee. Grab a drink, get cozy, and let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Wholesome Healing Collective podcast. We are so happy to have you joining us today. We are back here just having a casual conversation about some things that have been percolating in our lives recently. And so one of those things being the cacao challenge we mentioned a few weeks ago. Today is day 11 out of the 20-day challenge. And how are you feeling about this journey, Renee?
It's been great. I really didn't know what to expect going into it, since it's the first time participating and also really the first scratching at the surface of all the information and tradition around cacao. And I think it's been really eye-opening to it's been eye-opening to plant allyship for me and the depth of meaning that one plant can have for us in a culture, not just because of the benefits that it provides, like the antioxidants and the great fat and all of that, but more because of the ritual and the sacredness of using it in the traditions. And yeah, it's pretty incredible. I feel like I need a whole workbook to go with the challenge to follow along and remember the names of the different energies and what the different energies mean. So it's been a lot, but it's been really, really great. How have you been feeling with it?
It's been so fascinating to me. I love learning all about the Mayan culture and the energies of the day. So that's why it's a 20-day challenge. And challenge really is not doing it justice. It's more just being with the energies for 20 days and communing with the cacao and the group every morning for 20 days. And learning about those energies has been so fascinating. Have you checked out the energy on the day that you were born?
Yes, which we haven't gotten to that energy in them covering what it means yet. So I'm really excited to get to that one. And I want to say it's maybe 2 or 3 days from now, because it was the 10th energy and we didn't start at 1. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what that energy is. And I love how each energy within the calendar, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, if I'm summarizing correctly, there are 20 different energies. That's why 20 different days. But then each energy has 13 different manifestations of the energy, which creates a full 260-day cycle. And so the Mayans have all these different cycles that kind of all come together into a larger cycle. But this cycle is a way in which they it's kind of like a guiding light in their day. With each day having a different energy, it gives you something to focus on in the day, whether it's like today they were talking about going out and being of service and using today's energy to really cultivate relationships and to make those interpersonal connections. And then so they use each day to kind of guide their own energy and to embody that energy as kind of a little assistance in their day. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And it's such a cool way to honor like every aspect that is creating our reality as we know it, or maybe as we don't know it. There are so many things that we just are not aware, because that shining light, as you mentioned, isn't shining a light on some of the darkness that we are just, our unconscious mind is just like not aware of. It's just so fascinating. And when you open your eyes and you begin to learn new traditions, new cultures, it's just like, wow, I am just like a tiny speck in this giant macrocosm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me that something, and I'm sure there's probably so many examples of this that I'm not even aware of yet, but it's crazy how something so sacred that has been used in spiritual ceremonies and as part of a healthful lifestyle can then be changed and morphed so many times that it's become this just sweet, not good for you, um, processed commodity that's just out there as chocolate, um, when it's doesn't hardly even represent its original form anymore, physically or spiritually, energetically. And so it's become this like mass produced part of every holiday, part of every anniversary or apology, or like all these different things. And yet, no, such a small percentage of people actually give it any kind of reverence or respect. It's just this like Americanized, I don't even have the right word for it, but it's frustrating.
Mm-hmm. It is
It makes
over
me,
commercialized.
yeah, it makes me not want to support the commercialized version at all, because it's like, oh, you guys don't even know what the real stuff offers.
Yeah. We rarely buy chocolate, and unfortunately, when I do, it's a holiday, and that's probably the worst time to buy that commercial chocolate. Typically, we eat HU chocolate is so good, which is cacao. And then this cacao that came through from the Mayan Wisdom Project has been so delicious to drink every morning. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, Something you said, oh yeah, the over commercialization, like, so that's just chocolate, but there's so many other things, such as like tobacco, which is sacred in South America, Central America, somewhere. And again, it's just been over commercialized and filled with toxins and poisons and sold for $1 million a package. So you can
Yeah.
kill yourself. It's just, yeah, it is so fascinating when you look at those things.
Yeah. I actually only recently learned about, um, and I only know very little, but I've only recently started learning about the history with tobacco and how energetically cleansing it can be when used in ceremony with right relationship with it as a plant ally. And it blew my mind. I was absolutely mind blown. Like, wait, what? This
Yeah,
isn't the toxic, carcinogenic, like, and I mean, I guess when I think about it, I realize, okay, those are all the bad things that we've added to it in the commercialization process for it to be mass produced. It's even crazier than chocolate, because it's like, look at this plant that's actually cleansing in nature when used properly, grown from Mother Earth for us to use as a tool, and we go and put cancer causing poisons in it and then mass produce it to the people. And we then like, yeah,
yeah.
let's do it. I mean, granted, when it first came out, people didn't realize what it was doing until they were already hooked. But still, the amount of people who still smoke and are like, yeah, let's do it, even though it says right on the package it can cause cancer, is just mind blowing to me.
It is so crazy. I think it comes back to that, like, no one wants to believe it. No one wants to see that as like the actual reality because they don't want it to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same with chocolate. It's over sugarized. The chocolate has so much sugar in it, and that sugar is addictive, and people don't want to
Yeah.
see how bad that actually is. So they're They're just blind. They want to be.
Which is why too, when they go to try cacao in its pure form, they think it tastes terrible. I am guilty. I was telling you before the show how I've grown so accustomed to just drinking cacao and water, and it's not sweet at all, and I love it. But when I first tried it, I think it was maybe like 3-ish years ago, I went to a day-long retreat where they did a cacao ceremony. And I remember sitting in this big circle, and I was, had this little teacup full, and some people are like going back for seconds. And I'm like, I have to finish this. I'm going to be rude if I don't finish this. But I didn't like it at all. I was like, it's so bitter. Why? Like, why? I'm never going to drink this again. And now I love it. And what's neat is that the taste that I've grown accustomed to with the cacao has actually started unintentionally leading me away from coffee and the sugar I put in coffee, because it makes that taste so much more sweet that I'm like, oh, I don't really like that anymore. And I didn't really intend on necessarily, like I've had goals of cutting out caffeine, but more the caffeine part. I'd never really cared about the sugary part because I don't drink that much sugar, but it's just naturally like fallen to the wayside for me. So I'm like, cool, I'll take it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying this as like that self-care practice, and it's cool to see that your routines are changing too, and to be in right relationship with what you truly desire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really like the practice of what I try to do. And granted, I mean, I'm drinking cacao right now here at my computer, but what I try to do is not make it part of my like mental habits and mental activities. Like when I'm working and I'm at my computer, I'm in that mental pillar, as we call it, focusing or using my brain mostly. But I try to, when I'm communing with the cacao, I'm getting into the body. And that's the time when I'm at my altar, or I'm meditating, or I'm sitting outside, but I'm really being present with what I'm consuming, what I'm putting in my body, what I'm feeling around me, and just taking that as like a little morning ritual. Even though I'm not in ceremony with it, I'm making a ritual out of it that's outside of like, oh, I'm at my desk, I'm drinking my coffee, and it's just mindless. So that's been a really neat kind of change up as I've introduced this as more of a habit.
I love that. Yeah, I got to earth with cacao the first 2 days, and then my schedule or the weather has made it pretty hard to do that since. And I'm like, I need to go outside and put my feet in the dirt. But it rained all night, and so it's very muddy today.
Mm.
But I can't wait for it to dry out.
Spring is here. I've noticed with the season changing that and I remember noticing this last year too, of this feeling like, okay, this is my normal routine, but I'm needing to switch it up, but I don't know how. And kind of that resistance of like, no, this is my routine. This is what I should be doing. And then realizing, oh, wait, I can change this. This is my choice. We move in cycles. We're entering a new season, a new cycle. So rather than attach and hold on to what I've done before, it's been an invitation to kind of check back in with myself and actually ask, like, okay, what do I actually need right now? I think I need to move my body more. I've been kind of more hibernating winter activities, but now it's like, okay, what do I want to do to move, and how do I want to express? I've actually had this come up in meditation a couple times where my body's wanting to express more. So not just movement, but expressional movement, which is not normal for me. I'm not a very just expressional, or like I'm not the first one on the dance floor or stuff like that. So it's been interesting to pause and realize that kind of like calling from the energy in my body and stop and ask like, okay, strange, but what does this mean? And so I've kind of been playing with that. That's just interesting.
I love that movement, that expression. That's so cool. And you've been doing sacral and womb work. Do you think that that's related?
Yeah, actually um that I calling, as I said, that I felt like was coming from the body was actually came from one of the practices that was offered to me of doing womb massages. So
Mm.
actually taking, and I created like a womb oil and with some essential oils mixed with sesame oil. And I just, sesame oil is recommended to me because it's a warmer oil and I tend to be cold. But if you're someone that runs hot, then coconut oil might be a better choice. But either way, put in some yummy essential oils with it, and then just taking time out a couple times a week to actually um, practice that connection of like building a relationship with that energy center and with that area of my body, and doing a womb massage to kind of circulate the energy. I kind of just do like counterclockwise circles. Um, and then once you've kind of taken that time to nourish the body with your own touch, then pausing to go and bring your awareness there. I kind of do that the whole time, but then really pausing and being with that area of the body and asking that area, how can I love you more? Or how can I support you today? Or what do you want me to know? And that's where that I guess calling of expression movement. Because when I think of movement, it's like, oh, okay, movement. You want me to work out? And I was like, no, I don't want you to work out. I want you to like express to, and I think for me too, because I've been processing a lot of grief and emotions, like as I've been developing a relationship with this energy center of my body that I have neglected for many years. There's been a lot of emotions coming up that is like, okay, if you want a relationship with me, like we got to look at the good and the ugly, and there's stuff there that needs to be processed. So I've been working with that. And so I think the expression part of it is, okay, we're not just moving the energy, but the energy needs to move in a way that is aligned with the release, if that makes sense. So, you know how, like, if you're releasing one energy, it might make one sound, but if you're releasing another energy, it might make a different sound if you're using sound as the release. It was kind of like that in a not so many words, but that was the feeling I got of almost like the sadness needs to be expressed, not just moved haphazardly, kind of. So I'm
Yeah.
still figuring out what that looks like. And I've got some Qigong videos that were sent to me as a way to move with the grief that I'm gonna check out. But yeah, still feeling into it, but that's kind of been the calling that's arising.
Mm. I love that. That is so cool to listen to that story. And thank you for sharing. Not that it's a story, your
I know.
experience.
Yeah.
Um, and I love how it's so different for everybody, everybody's relationship with that their womb and what that looks like, and how maybe we didn't have a choice to go down the road that we did with our womb and any other part of our body, even emotions. We might not have had a choice to express our emotions. So it's so fascinating to like be at this point in our life and look back at the relationship we had with whatever it was and be like, I get to heal this now. And it might be uncomfortable, but it is so worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that, like, even though it's so important to have support, the support should always lead you back to figuring out what it is your body's asking you to do, rather than support that's telling you what you should do. And that's something that I feel like has really shifted for me in the last little while. And even in working with, I have different mentors that I work with, and there's very wide range of styles. And so it's not only finding the right mentors and support that's going to lead you back to yourself and lead you back to the answers that are within, but then also, I think, finding your own voice and asking for that too. I've noticed that coming up with one of my mentors who is extremely knowledgeable and has offered so much information. I'm loving everything I'm learning, but her style is very structured. It's very predetermined. Here's my information on session 3, we're focusing on this with these journal prompts and these exercises and this homework, and it's all predetermined. And so there's not a lot of room for the arising, which I'm not used to, because our style of coaching is almost exclusively about the arising. And so that was a really big pivot for me. And at first I was like, I don't really like this. It felt very confining. But then I realized that the lesson for me in that was asking for what I want and what I need. So when, session 17 comes around and we're focused on anger, but I'm feeling deep sorrow, that's my opportunity to use my voice and say, hey, I don't want to focus on this today. Like, I need to focus on this. I need support with this arising, and allowing for that flexibility to come in. And then, to my surprise, there it is. It's like, at first, for me, who struggles with asking for what I want and not just being the good girl that does what she's told, I make all these stories in my head about how that inflexibility isn't there, even though I don't actually know that because I didn't ask. And so it was really great for me to realize how I felt with it. And instead of just saying, this isn't for me, I don't like this structure, it's like, no, okay, I need to actually ask for what I want and give the opportunity for that to be received before I just hightail it out of here and flee, right? And I was met with the flexibility, and I was met with the support that I needed. So that's just been a really neat realization. And I feel like I just took us on a total tangent, but
No, that's so cool. There's healing in every interaction.
yeah.
I've always been one that's like, just like, I'll go with the flow, and I'm sure that the answer is going to come at some point. So I'm just always like, so like in such a state of surrender. And I know what that is now. I didn't know before. I was just thought I was easygoing. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of funny. Like, I don't probably use my voice the same way that you are learning to use it. And I probably need to spend more time. But I also feel like I am such like a stubborn, I want to say a stubborn asshole, that like, if I want something, I'm just going to do that anyways. So I feel like it's like both sides, where I'm like, I'll go with the flow, but also I'm going to like support myself on the side if I'm not going to be met in the training or the class or whatever it is. So I don't know if stubborn is the word. Independent, self-sufficient, which apparently is a trauma response. So, that's cool.
I mean, it's one of those like greatest strengths, maybe greatest weaknesses at times, but I'm sure supports you more than it hurts you in the sense of, especially since, when you're not being met, rather than either not just relinquishing, like, oh, okay, I'm just going to surrender that I'm not going to have that support. You're like, no, I'm going to go make my support because I'm independent and I can do that. So I think that's wonderful.
it could also be the manifesting generator in me, that I've got like the energy to do it, and the manifester that's like just out there doing their own thing anyways. So it's like coming together and creating that. My
Yeah,
answers. I'm just creating my own answers.
totally. And I'm a firm believer too that when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. And so I think there is a lot of power in that surrender. You know, if you find yourself in a group container or with a coach or something where you're, I'm not so sure about it, I think there's a lot of power in that surrender of, no, I'm supposed to be here. I asked for this. This is the mentor that showed up. What is here for me? Whether it's, maybe it's asking for what I want, or maybe it's surrendering to what's being presented, even if it's triggering, even if it's a repeat information, even if it's brand new, surrendering to it and saying, okay, this is exactly what I need to hear. What am I supposed to be getting out of this?
Mm, yes.
And there was something, I was in a class with Robin yesterday, and she was talking about how different things get activated in the body. And as we start to learn things, or we do meditations, or are initiated with certain activations, things like that, like sometimes things turn on like that. Sometimes we release things like that. And sometimes we don't. And sometimes it's a process. And she was kind of reaffirming to the group that you might get to the end of the course and not have it all figured out. And that's okay. Some of the things that you're activating now are seeds that you may not benefit from the fruit until you're long out of the course, but trust that it's all going into the spirit, it's going into the mind, it's all being taken in, and things are happening, even if you can't see them yet, even if you don't see them by the end of the course. So, yeah, that's always encouraging. And I feel like those reminders always come at the right time.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I love that reaffirming that like everybody is different, and different activations are either quick or a long process. Like I can see that in my own self and with my clients, where yesterday I did a group session and somebody was like, just feel like I'm like still working on something. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, it could be something that's been with you for a really long time, and then it keeps showing up every time we go into the body. I need to tell her this because this came through after our session ended. Maybe she's not finding the lesson. Maybe she's just looking at it in the face
Mm-hmm.
and wondering why are you still here? And then
Mm-hmm.
saying goodbye. And then it's just coming over and over again, and she's not pulling the lesson.
Yeah.
Or every time she's having that conversation, it's just a small piece of the lesson. So it's just so fascinating when we go and do that work.
Yeah. Like if there's fear or resistance or that protector online, that might be preventing the depth that you want to go. Um, I think sometimes, at least for me, when I was starting to go deeper into the body through breath work and meditation, at times I felt I would plateau a bit. And I think it's like we're dipping our toe into the water, and then we start to get comfortable with that. And it's like we might get down to the foot or the ankles, but then every so often it's like, okay, I keep going to the ankles, but I can't go further. And
Mm.
there's like a fear there, or there's a resistance, or there's a wall up that, maybe you're looking at a trauma because you're like, okay, I know this happened when I was 12, and it's affecting all these things in my life. And this is what I need to focus on. This is what I need to resolve. So you're looking at it, and you can't ever get past the protector or the coping mechanism or the pattern that's in your way, the perception. So maybe you're looking at it, but your perception's still the same. You're still looking at it from the same trauma lens that you've always looked at it. It's just that now, maybe you were resisting it like this, and now you're looking at it like this, but you're still looking at it from the same lens versus being able to really get into a different vantage point, the heart or wherever, where the safety can happen, where the veil of the coping mechanism or the protector can drop, and then you see it with new eyes. Sometimes that can allow you to get that next level lesson, or even see it with more compassion. I know sometimes seeing myself with more compassion has led me to so much more acceptance of something that's happened, or of the person I was when I made whatever decision. Just opening up your own heart in that regard can be amazing. I feel like I just led us on another tangent.
It was so good though. So much juicy information there for anybody that is working on something and they keep feeling like they're stuck on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. How was this eclipse season for you?
I feel like it's been a whirlwind, but so much more about astrology. I almost feel like I want you to explain maybe what can generally happen, because it might make everything that's been happening to me make more sense. And maybe for others.
I feel like I should have come prepared for this. So there's 2 eclipses in a 2-week period. One's a new moon, so the moon is black, and then the second one is where there's a full moon. And then in between those 2 weeks is like this portal, this window. And so it can be a window of opportunity, or it can also be where you're shutting the doors on relationships or things that are bad for you. And you can actually lose relationships. So sometimes when you go into an eclipse, you want to be ready for any conversations that may be arising, like witnessing and discerning. Do you want to be kind and compassionate to keep this relationship alive, or do you want to shut that door? And it's really crazy. So for me as a female, the most at-risk relationships are males who are either father figure, husband, and a boss. And it's I think it's in that pecking order is what I read. And then so it can be for the flip side for males, it'd be the female. But then you can also have relationships where it's female to female that you may sever. So just being really aware of those. And then I'm pretty sure during this eclipse season, Mercury also went retrograde. So it was also just really crazy time.
Yeah, we just came out of retrograde yesterday.
Yeah. So it was an interesting time energetically. And honestly, I've been so busy with other things that I was a little disconnected from really what was happening. And then I was just trying to go with the flow. But I do feel like it definitely was a portal. It opened and I came out the other side, and my business is flourishing and opportunities are being presented. And my energy is just like feeling really flowy and good. I love that. But it can be a time where you're shown things, or things might reemerge in your life, and you need to discern again, is this something I need to work through? Is this something I want to shut the door on? And so it's so fascinating what can happen in an eclipse.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely resonate with the shedding aspect. I feel like these last couple of weeks have been a lot. It's been a lot of shedding and but it's been a neat combination, because I truly feel like while the last couple of weeks have been really heavy with what I've been sitting with and what I'm being asked to process, and it's definitely has not been pretty or felt good at times. I have continued to remind myself that every bit of emotion that I sit with and allow myself to feel, that I haven't allowed myself to feel for 20 years, is being released. And that's been really comforting for me, is like, okay, I'm feeling it to release it. I'm feeling it to release it, or I'm feeling it to integrate it. And not that everything I'm feeling needs to go, but I just knew, I was able to discern that a lot of what was coming up weren't emotions about my current life situation. They were old. They were just old emotions that needed to be felt so that I could release them. So, in that, what's really beautiful is that all of that I'm releasing, I've felt it creating space. And that space that I'm creating has had ripple effects, and it's slow, but I feel myself coming out of hiding. I feel myself as I start to come out of hiding, and I have been getting reassurance from the people that are seeing me, that aren't judging me and they are accepting me. It's allowing me to come out of hiding a little more and a little more. And then it's also creating space for those new opportunities. Like, we, hopefully I'm not letting the
Oh,
cat
do
out of
it.
the bag, but Alyssa and I just found our location for the retreat that we're going to host in October, which is super exciting. And we have been looking for a couple of months now. We've looked at a ton of different places in multiple states, and we've just been kind of holding out for what really felt aligned. And there were moments of feeling a little discouraged because we couldn't find what was just right. And I just, was it just last week that we anchored
I
in?
think
I think
so.
it was just last week we anchored this in. And it was like towards the end of last week. And it was a serendipitous connection of a friend who told me of a place. I reached out, they were totally booked. And I decided to email them anyways and say, hey, if you have a wait list for October, like, can you put me on it and let me know? And immediately, or not immediately, but within a couple days, got an email saying, we just so happen to have an opening in October, and it just so happens to be the dates that you guys are looking at. So it all aligned so well. And it was right after, so earlier in that week, I had had a day where I just felt like I was drowning in my emotions, like couldn't get off the couch, huge just wave of grief. And all I could do was be with it. I called into work. I just cleared my schedule and was like, okay, I'm riding this wave. I'm here. And I just went with it. And then later in that week, that space was created and things started to unfold. And I'm just trusting that that's going to keep happening again and again. The more that we release, the more space gets created for those opportunities to come in. And it's my opportunity to allow that duality to be present, because if I let myself, like, I have to let myself be in that wave of emotions, and I also can't let myself get sucked in so far that I don't leave that couch, right? Like, that, in years past, that's probably would have happened to me, where I just would have fell into that for a week or two, maybe not to that extreme, but that energy would have stayed with me for much longer. But because I was so present with it and I was devoted to moving through it, I was able to process it within a couple of days instead of a couple of weeks. And I'm still processing it, and I know I'm still going to get more waves, but I just noticed how, even though it was more intense than maybe I felt it before, it left me much faster. And I was able to then, okay, now what energy is here? Oh, there's this new opportunity energy, and I'm going to let that breathe life into me, and I'm going to let that fuel me to something else, even though I'm not ignoring what's still present. And I know I still need more work with it, I'm still going to allow that new, fresh energy to excite me and give me something to hold in the other hand and have that duality. So
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
it feels beautiful now, but man, did it feel ugly when I was in it.
Yes, it's so powerful to be with our emotions. And obviously, you knew why they were there, but sometimes we don't know why we're feeling those emotions. And then we don't give them the full awareness and feel them fully. Then we just carry them around like a little briefcase everywhere we go, making it just worse.
Yeah. I love how Sam says, she always says, we're meaning making machines. So whenever we feel something, we want to make meaning around it. We want to have a story. We want to understand, why are you here? And that's not always productive. Like sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just feel it and let it go. Like maybe you know it's coming up from the past and you don't know what it is and why it's here. Maybe you just need to feel it and let it go. So yeah, an invitation to anyone that maybe has something coming up and they don't necessarily feel the need to go and analyze it or figure it out, or maybe you just need to release a layer before you can get to the understanding. We don't always have to make meaning and story.
Is there anything else you would like to say?
The words opening the heart are coming up. I think maybe that's the cacao speaking of just like wherever you're at on your journey with your self-care, your morning rituals, your processing of the emotions that are coming up with current stuff or past stuff. How can we approach all of it with an open heart? What tools can you use to open your heart? Because it's different for all of us. Yeah, that calling to come back to the heart.
I'd love to add, and then once it's open, viewing the world from that place.
Yeah. Viewing the world from that place. That's where the magic happens.
Yes. Beautiful.
Good stuff, my friend.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon.